Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. I would like to kindly ask everyone as you're trickling in, if you could please take your seat as we will be beginning. Today's keynote panel and award ceremony will be recorded and also available online. Now, before we get started, there are several housekeeping items that we would like to share for everybody who is attending in person today. Please take a moment to look around you and identify the two exits that are closest to you. These exits may be behind you. In the event of a fire alarm, we are required to evacuate this room immediately. If this occurs, please take your valuables with you and do not use the elevators. While staff will endeavor to assist you to the nearest exit, you should also know that you may find an exit door by following the ceiling-mounted exit signs. Evacuees will exit down the stairways and to the relocation site across the street in Cesar Chavez Park. If you cannot use the stairs, you will be directed to a protective area inside of a stairwell. Should we have to relocate outside the building, please obey all traffic signals and exercise caution crossing the street. I'm now going to provide brief information about the location of the drinking fountains, the restroom, and the downstairs cafe. The drinking fountain and restrooms are located outside these two doors. And when you walk out these doors, if you turn left and you see the hanging glass sculptures from the ceiling, you will make one more left. And down this hallway are the restrooms and the drinking fountain on the right-hand side. A cafe is located on the first floor of this building across the lobby from the security desk. And please be advised, today in particular, we strongly encourage all of our in-person attendees to recycle. Please look for the green and tan 3-in-1 recycling containers. They are in this room, located in the back of the room, where you can recycle your paper bottles and cans. And now we have a short announcement about Spanish interpretation.
To see today's transcript online, click on Live Transcript in your meeting controls, then click Show Subtitle. Spanish interpretation is available in person. Please raise your hand to receive a headset. For online Spanish interpretation, go to the Cal EPA website shown on screen and click on the Spanish link. Para ver la transcripción de hoy en línea, haga clic en Live Transcript o Transcripción en vivo en los controles de la reunión. Luego haga clic en Show Subtitle o Mostrar subtítulos. Para la interpretación en español presencial, por favor levante la mano para recibir audífonos. Para la interpretación en español en línea, vaya al sitio web de Cal EPA que aparece en pantalla y haga clic en el enlace para el evento en español.
Good afternoon, everyone. Now that we're through with housekeeping, good afternoon, right? Yes. Welcome to our annual IPM Achievement Award ceremony. This is one of my favorite events that the department does every year because it's an amazing opportunity to be able to celebrate folks who are really taking leadership roles relative to thinking about how we manage pests within the state of California, and also creating opportunities to connect with one another, to be able to share insights, to be able to learn and think about how we might solve problems, learning from the past and applying to the future. So I'm so excited to have all of you here today. My name is Karen Morrison. I am the director of DPR and have the great privilege of being able to open today's session. At DPR, our vision of safe, effective, and sustainable pest management for all Californians in our environment is really rooted in how we think about managing pests and the work that comes along with that. Pests know no boundaries. They move from urban to ag to forested areas, across borders. And so really looking at collaborative and innovative approaches to be able to think about how we solve the problems of today and the problems of tomorrow are really critical. And so events like this that recognize the role of integrated pest management are really critical as a part of that. We have today, and I'm looking to see, Catalina is here. It's going to say that I was going to introduce our undersecretary, but she might be running a minute or two late. So what I will do, we'll give her a minute or so to join, but wanted to highlight what's going to be coming for today. Um, Today's event brings together organizations, both state agencies, businesses, and nonprofits to really think about how we practice IPM on the ground as a part of our work. And so we're going to start with a keynote panel, and I'm so thrilled to be able to have three leaders in their various spaces being able to come and talk about how we think about collaborative approaches around solving the challenges and opportunities, or addressing, maybe solving is too strong of a word, but working towards solutions around pest management. We'll then transition to our awards ceremony, and I'm so thrilled to be able to hear from our three different awardees today. And then we'll follow with a networking session next door. And if you didn't have a chance to peek in the room, it's a really great setup, and we're looking forward to a combination of demonstrations and kind of broader networking sessions. So with that, I'm so thrilled to be able to introduce Carolina Hayes Bautista to be able to provide some opening remarks for our session today. She is, this is her final week as acting secretary for Cal EPA, but serves as our undersecretary. So thank you so much for coming.
Perfect timing. Hello, everyone. As Karen mentioned, yes, my final week as acting secretary. The secretary Garcia had a baby, and so she'll be back next week, which I'm very excited about. But thank you all for having me here today. As Karen mentioned, Catalina Hayes Bautista, undersecretary here at Cal EPA. It's a pleasure to be here and join the Department of Pesticide Regulation in recognizing the outstanding recipients of this year's Integrated Pest Management Achievement Awards. On behalf of the California Environmental Protection Agency and Secretary Garcia, I want to thank DPR for its continued leadership in advancing safer and more sustainable approaches to pest management throughout California. I would also like to recognize today's award winners, as well as the researchers, educators, growers, and community partners in the room. Each of you play a critical role in protecting human health and safeguarding our environment. Integrated Pest Management, or IPM, is foundational to California's approach to pesticide regulation. It reflects our shared commitment to prevention, science-based decision-making, and long-term stewardship. IPM asks us to understand the ecosystems we manage and to choose solutions that are both effective and minimize harm to people, wildlife, and the environment. When it's paired with education, outreach, and strong community partnerships, IPM helps us reduce unnecessary pesticide exposures, supports healthier working and living conditions, and advances more equitable outcomes. Today's awardees show us what that looks like in practice. Across California landscapes, you are demonstrating that safer pest management is possible, practical, and effective. The outstanding work and examples set by today's awardees is particularly important as we address emerging challenges, from climate-driven pest pressures to continuing to build more resilient and sustainable food systems. Cal EPA remains committed to fostering innovations, supporting science-based solutions, and ensuring that our policies continue to protect people and the environment today and for future generations. So congratulations to today's award recipients. Thank you for your leadership, innovation, and contributions to a healthier and more sustainable California. Welcome all. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that as setting kind of the vision and direction of what we're looking at, kind of hopes for the future and how we think about integrated pest management in that context, I'd like to invite our panelists up. You have their full bios in the program, and I hope you were able to pick up a copy on the way in, but just briefly want to welcome Kamal Bagri, who is the Agricultural Commissioner and Sealer of Weights and Measures of San Joaquin County. She brings 25 years of experience of her work, including a focus on pest prevention and supporting education and enforcement of pesticide use laws. We have Jonathan Evans, who is the Environmental Health Legal Director with the Center for Biological Diversity, where he advocates for wildlife, particularly relative to threats of environmental contamination and pesticides. And finally, Jamie Fanous is the Policy and Organizing Director at the Community Alliance with Family Farmers. And she works to bring people together through policy advocacy and technical assistance to create more resilient family farms, communities, and ecosystems. So I'm going to transition 3 feet to my left and we'll get started. So thank you, all three of you, for joining today. I've had the pleasure of working with all three of you in different capacities the last several years, and I'm really looking forward to exploring a little bit both your knowledge and experience around both IPM and SPM and how we think about kind of system approaches for addressing some of the really, I think, interesting and complex challenges that come around pest management, considerations of human health, and impacts to the environment as a part of that work. Part of what I value so much about panels like this is an opportunity to hear from different folks who bring a little bit of a different perspective on how we do that work, what different tools and opportunities we have to be able to move forward, and where those collaborations across different voices are really helpful. Up with interesting and new solutions as a so. In thinking about pest management, often there's no easy solutions, and that work often requires really out solutions. And so, Kamal, we'd really love to start with you as a part of this, that in your role as County Ag Commissioner, and more generally as well, of how do you think about collaborative approaches to support sustainable pest management and protect?
Hey, thank you, Karen, for inviting me today to speak. I think it is an important event here, and as a County Ag Commissioner, I am really humbled to be present today to speak about this. As a County Ag Commissioner, my primary job here is to be enforcement or enforce pesticide laws and regulations, conduct compliance inspections, protect production agriculture, as well as our folks or citizens of the county. But I do see that we play a very, very important role in SPM, Sustainable Pest Management. The foundational programs at the Ag Commissioner levels include pest detection and pest prevention. And as you know, the invasive pest, once they roll into the California agriculture, there are a lot of inputs that go into to prevent further spread. So I believe that in my county, at the local level, those pest detection programs we have under California Department of Food and Ag, working collaboratively with them, as well as for our dog teams. For those of you who are not aware that at the County Ag Commissioner level, we have 16 dog teams, canine units, that work every single day at the high-risk parcel facilities. And that collaboration is not only just with California Department of Food and Ag, but also at USDA, United States Department of Agriculture. These canine teams are fundamental and key component in pest prevention services. They mark any packages that could be coming through with any type of agricultural products, fruits and vegetables, which might harbor pests, and they play an important role in stopping introduction of those pests when they are detected at the first level. So for myself, I think that pest prevention is an important tool that we are using in SPM. For me, SPM is not about reducing inputs. It's also early detection of pests and preventing the introduction of those pests. So I believe that we work very, very closely with CDFA, USDA, in making sure that those pests stay away from California agriculture.
For sharing that. And I think the use of a variety of different tools, right? Dog teams, I don't think folks necessarily think of that, of kind of going and literally sniffing out pests that are coming in as a way of early intervention is, I think, such a great approach to think about how kind of as government we can think about. I'm curious if you could maybe expand a little bit about how you think about like partnership with private industry, with agriculture, with um, mo- that within the realm.
So with the growers or with the industry, agriculture industry, we work very closely with the nursery industry. And I remember in my past role in Stanislaus County, we worked very much in collaboration with the nursery industry because we had some detections of sudden oak death disease in the potted plants. And rather than utilizing pesticide, we wanted them to look outside of the box or think outside of the box. And they used STEAM methodology. And good for us was that for USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, they approved that method for soil sanitation. So rather than using soil fumigant, nursery ended up using sterilization through steam, and we were able to work together and able to release all that nursery from the quarantine.
I love that as a way of thinking about how do you meet a pressing need, look at different types of technology or applications, and kind of what is that whole system you can look at besides just using pesticides. Yes, thank you for sharing that. Jonathan, if I can maybe turn to you, kind of thinking about coming from a very non-government side as a part of your work around nonprofit, around like how you and your organization think about or addressing some of the complex pest management challenges.
To DPR for hosting this event. The Center for Biological Diversity is very focused on wildlife protection and endangered species protection. A lot of the work that we do is trying to advance steps to avoid harms that jeopardize the continued existence of wildlife or adversely modify their critical habitat. One of the key aspects of that is utilizing the law and the Endangered Species Act to ensure that wildlife are around for the future, particularly. Environmental Protection Agency has had a challenge throughout its history when it registers pesticides of ensuring compliance with the Endangered Species Act. That these pesticides that are insecticides, for example, don't push wildlife like the Carner's blue butterfly to extinction. At this complex consultation process, which is challenging, you have hundreds of chemicals that are used across the country for a range of habitats affecting a range of species. A complex problem to solve. And one of the ways that we've worked collaboratively with EPA, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Marine Fisheries Service, as well as pesticide registrants and industry trade groups like CropLife, is working on refined mapping systems to help minimize or avoid pesticide use in areas where it's most harmful to wildlife and endangered species. Development of what are referred to as pesticide use limitation areas. We've looked at historical range maps for endangered species, and maps are much broader than where the species exist today. Oftentimes they're done at a very coarse level. You have either a species exists in this county or it doesn't, and so you have the whole county is showing up as a species range, and that really as refined of a tool as you need, because many wildlife species need particularly habitats, riparian corridors or wetlands. You're not going to find them if you have a species existing in county. It's probably not going to exist from the snowy peaks of Mount San Jacinto all the way down to the deserts in the Mojave. So you can really look at where these habitat areas, where these wildlife exist, look at California Natural Diversity Database data, have more refined mappings. So we've worked collaboratively with the agency to develop better maps for example, the Buena Vista Lake ornate shrew, which exists in county, but in very narrow areas. So if you can avoid exposing pesticides for particular wildlife species that are really harmed by them in particularly narrow areas, it can really simplify the consultation process for these agencies in the registry, provide the best conservation work. Maps on our website, just go to biologicaldiversity.org and look up pesticide use limitation area. You'll see with the industry, find the sort of mutually beneficial bang for the buck for the species, and also streamlining the Bible to
what it brings to mind is you talk a lot about in application of pesticide. Press a weed to protect. Find and identify where there are impacted habitats. Valuable in that, and also I think complex. That really brings to mind. Situations and to do that.
Can folks hear me okay? I know we've been kind of silent and lazy with these mics. So if folks in the back, can you hear me? Perfect. Just checking. Yeah, thank you for the question. And just to reiterate, CAF stands for the Community Alliance with Family Farmers. We're a nonprofit, California-based nonprofit that's been around for a long time, 45 plus years, working directly with primarily small and underserved farmers across the state of California. I am lucky that I get to represent around 8,000 farmers. And so just to give you that context of like, we are working very directly and very on the ground with farmers. A core value of ours is that our work is farmer driven and it's farmer led. And that goes to kind of thinking about sustainable pest management and organizing and thinking collaboratively. And so I'm sorry, I do a little bit of crowd work. I'm an advocate. So just out of curiosity, raise of hands, like who knows a farmer or like has a relationship with a farmer who has worked with a farmer in your world, just so I can get a sense. Heck yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. It's so important that our work is farmer centered, and if you're not collaborating with farmers on sustainable pest management, I'm sorry to say you're not doing it right. It's really important that you are collaborating with farmers, thinking through this work and collaborating with them around how do we navigate this? How are we tinkering with this? Like, our resources are limited, especially when we're thinking about really rural parts of California where there isn't the PCA that understands spider mites. Like, we have to be thinking creatively and collaboratively on really complex solutions. So that's kind of how we navigate a lot of it. And I can talk at length a little bit more about it later.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
love to hear, like, if you have a specific example. that, like,
Absolutely.
I'm sure you have many, but one
Yes.
that particularly jumped out within
Yeah,
this space.
absolutely. Yeah. So these days, our ecological farming team has been working really closely with a lot of walnut orchards, navigating spider mites. A very core component of our work is organizing field days. It might sound kind of simple, but it's like getting farmers onto a farm to like witness the release of like a way, a beneficial insect to navigate something like spider mites. It's earth shattering. I was just talking to my colleague recently, and they had a field day at this ranch called Unruh Ranch. It's a 200-acre walnut orchard, and they had a field day. They had a couple dozen walnut farmers there at that farm. They kind of did this demo. They chatted, and the following day they got at least a dozen phone calls being like, where do I find this beneficial insect? How do I figure this out? I want to do this. I want to do implement these practices that I saw on this farm. That's like, that happens all the time, every single time they have a field day. And they even find out like farmers drove 3+ hours to go to that field day. Like there is a craving for these opportunities, and whether we like it or not, getting told what to do is not really something that farmers appreciate, especially if it's coming from a regulatory agency or if it's coming from a set of laws. That's not really collaborative. That's not how they like to work, whether we like it or not. They figure out the perfect way to grow something, and it took them 20 years. Trying to convince them to change those practices is going to take some time, and it's going to take some trust. And so we're really grateful. CAF has 40+ years of trust built. So by us hosting a field day with Daniel from Unruh Ranch, it transformed the perspective and the minds of a lot of farmers, and they're going to think about, okay, how do I integrate this new practice? How do I figure out how to navigate this? So that's like one little baby example of like dozens. They probably had 3 field days just today. They're out there doing this work in a really serious way, where I get to just chat about it in Sacramento. Yeah.
I just had a comment because Jamie mentioned trust. Since agriculture commissioners work at the local level, I think there is that trust that we try to build as a regulator with our growers, and education is the most important component of that. As laws and regulations are designed here in Sacramento, right? We are at the table providing input because we know that how is that going to impact our growers at the local level. Different growers use different practices. I have one example that came in mind as you were speaking was about the innovation and technology during orchard applications. So in the past, with the orchard sprayers, agriculture commissioners would see that we had a lot of drift cases, specifically during bloom season, we call during almond orchards in San Joaquin Valley. As you know, almonds is a big crop. And every year, ag commissioners, they would conduct hundreds of investigations and inspections based on if there were any drift cases that would come through. Now, with the precision applications, as the growers are using these new technologies, they are becoming aware that these new type of sprayers, precision sprayers, we call them, they are available. These sprayers have this technology of making or spraying only when they recognize there is a tree in front of them. So as the sprayer is going through the orchard, it stops and starts and stops and starts. And that reduces the input, it reduces the cost, it reduces the drift, and I think we all can achieve what we are looking for of less use of pesticide.
I really appreciate you sharing that, but both of you, around where that like local trust education, sharing of best practices, or kind of identify local challenges of how do we move through that in ways that are effective. But I think that also it's very much done in the larger context of what are broader legal requirements, regulations, policies that are coming in place. And so, Jonathan, want to maybe transition a little bit to how Center for Biological Diversity is thinking about some of these, which I think takes a little bit more of a systems level approach for much of the work that's happening within CBD, of kind of how you're thinking about applying that to navigate challenges related to.
Thought a lot about in particular that how to make sure that integrated pest management and sustainable pest implemented in an action forcing way, as opposed to aspirational goal or options, because it can be easy, particularly damaging pesticide because it's cheaper and front end, but all those externalities of increased risk aren't put in the cost of putting that product on the market. So how do we disincentivize some of these more dangerous? And how do we disincentivize? These are blood thinning rat poisons. Thank you. I apologize. In passage of the Poison-Free Wildlife Act of 2024, there's language specifically requiring integrated pest management before the use of anticoagulant rodenticides. And that is specifically labeled as biological controls, habitat modification, and modification of cultural practices before the use of any types of anticoagulant rodenticides. So one of the things I think that's a real challenge for DPR is how do you make sure that those types of sustainable pest management and integrated pest management are implemented before the use of any of these more dangerous pesticides. And if you look at the University of California Integrated Pest Management definition, it really speaks, that's been codified in the Food and Agriculture Code. It really speaks to looking at ecosystem-based practices, ecosystem-based services, and avoidance of some of these pesticides that do have particularly adverse effects. And unless you're really able to put your thumb on the scale of disincentivizing some of these more dangerous pesticides, there's always going to be a tendency to want to look towards the easy, quick fix that isn't a more sustainable long-term solution. And so I think that's a real opportunity for all of us within the community that's interested in that to look for, and also for DPR to try and find those challenging opportunities to require more sustainable pest management, integrated pest management, or more harmful products.
Yeah, it's such an interesting question for how you think about documenting a practice that we don't currently require, right? So if you don't use a pesticide, that doesn't get reported to anybody, it just doesn't happen, right? And so I think that that question of where there are systems in place to be able to better articulate what's going well around integrated pest management. I think there's a lot that's going very well around that. And also to be able to identify where are those gaps? Why, in some cases, are folks moving toward very high risk products? That's a good question. I think one that, we certainly look at, I know everyone on this panel is looking at in sort of different ways as a part of that, and where we build in systems to be able to help support appropriate use, but also taking into account where there are risks, how we are incentivizing consideration of the whole spectrum of impacts, right? Not just what does biological control look like, but what are impacts to human health, the environment, economic vitality, kind of the whole suite of pieces. Where that both structural consideration as well as on the ground education, trust building are all really important parts of that overall pie.
Oh, I was talking to some of my colleagues earlier this week about this, and some of the barriers that they brought up were actually news to me of like, well, I should say, like, we do need more independent PCAs. That's an obvious, like, we need more PCAs that are on the ground really providing the technical assistance necessary, and ideally PCAs that are not hired by chemical companies would be ideal in that situation, to really be educating our farmers, but also just like providing technical assistance on these issues is hard. It's not just about, okay, I checked the box on the grant that the farmer reduced the pesticide that we said they would reduce, but it's like, you go to the farm, you have that conversation with the farmer of what pest pressure they're dealing with. You are constantly adapting and shifting and having conversations that like isn't being really measured anywhere, and is actually the bulk of the work, is having those conversations and troubleshooting with them before you actually get to the point of like, oh, okay, we're going to reduce this pesticide in this way, and we're going to introduce this new practice in another way. And then there's these other elements of collaboration with companies. It was interesting to learn that, like, when you're buying a new product, you have to buy like 1,000 units of that product. If you are a small farmer, you might only need 5. So you actually can't access certain resources that you would want to. And that just adds to a lot of the expense of adopting these new practices, these new IPM practices and sustainable pest management practices. That should be conversations, actually could be easy fixes of like, okay, sell this product at just slightly smaller packaging. And that could be a huge hurdle addressed. So I think just like looking into those weeds has been really interesting, at least for me recently.
That where there's some of these small conversations can help inspire, like, where are there small barriers that we could move through relatively easily, and knowing that there's structural complicated issues. We were at with a couple of folks before this around, policies that and priorities that have been priorities for decades, because some of these are really like time intensive structural barriers that exist, and there are opportunities to continue to move collective work. We're starting to get close to the end of our time for the panel, so I want to maybe transition us to thinking about looking forward. And we just want to hear from each of you about something that you're hopeful for the future relative to sustainable pest management, in terms of how we could think about moving forward and supporting that work in ways that will advance mission and goals relative to sustainable California. Paul, do you want to go first?
I think, you hear me? Okay. What gives me hope is that the new generations, the upcoming younger farmers, they are more in alignment with the soil health, you know, turning into organics, and they are looking at precision applications. They are using data-driven programs rather than continuing to use the practices which maybe the previous growers or the older generations have used. I believe the education from the agriculture commissioner's point of view is the most important key component of this, bringing different agencies into the talks, UCC, Cooperative Extension, with the continued research that is going on their end, bringing that information in our continuing education classes that we provide to our growers on a yearly basis probably would be a great help, and I think that would advance these SPM practices that we want to put out.
I guess there are two things that come to mind in terms of hope for the future, particularly in California's agricultural industry, is, commending DPR for their really robust pesticide use reporting. When you look at those trends over the past 10 years, you see drops in some of the carcinogenic pesticides, the groundwater contaminants, the cholinesterase inhibitors, reproductive toxins. You see drops in all of those on an annual basis and indeed a decade-long basis. But you also see increases in biopesticides and oil. So there is shift within the state, but we're still using way too much of these carcinogenic reproductive toxin and products. So one of the things that also is hopeful in terms of continuing to shift downward on some of those more problematic products is the passage of AB 2113, requiring Department of Pesticide Regulation to reevaluate pesticides on an annual basis, and particularly putting in priority pesticides into that reevaluation process. And typically when pesticides get out of the reevaluation process, it may take a while, but there are mitigations that reduce the harm. Do they go as far as groups like the Center for Biological Diversity want in terms of getting rid of some of these older chemistries like organophosphates and carbamates? No, but it certainly will reduce some of the harms, which I think is particularly valuable.
The things that I always turn to farmers. Honestly, we do this intensive listening process every fall, and I get to talk to hundreds of farmers. It's a real privilege. And hearing from them that this is something that excites them, hearing from my colleagues that when they have field days that it's oversubscribed and they can't make enough space on this farm to be educating and supporting farmers with figuring out how to implement sustainable pest management practices, that gives me a lot of hope. We just need to actually come up with ways to allow them to take on risks. This is a risky thing that you're asking farmers to do, is to shift how they're thinking and shift how they're implementing. This is their business. This is their livelihood. And taking on new risks is challenging, especially if you're a small scale farmer or you're an underserved farmer where you're barely making enough to pay yourself. Asking them to take on a significant financial risk is hard. So finding ways that we actually mitigate some of that risk and allow them to be creative and work with us is something that I'm looking forward to and seeing a lot of right now.
maybe I'll just share a hope for myself for the work that we do within the state. Really being able to help support and facilitate some of these conversations where we build on the success that's been in place in California, because there's a lot to celebrate relative to work around how we're thinking about pest management. And there are places to continue to grow, to advance, to learn from what we've done in the past to be able to apply to the new challenges moving forward. And so thank you all so much for sharing your time, for being part of this, for kind of inviting a conversation as we think about the roles of broader structures, the importance of trust and education, ability to be able to advance and continue to move forward. Complexities that exist within this space. So thank you all so much for sharing your time. If you have questions for our panelists, find them later. They'll be around. I think our goal is to be continuing this as kind of seeding additional conversations as we go through the rest of the day. So please join me in thanking our panelists. And then I am going to cede the microphone to our Deputy Director, Sapna Tortil, who's going to take us through the IPM Achievement Awards. So, Sapna.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can folks hear me? Okay, great. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, panelists. It's wonderful to be hosting the IPM Achievement Awards ceremony again this year. So this is an annual highlight for DPR, where we add to our growing list of IPM leaders practicing sustainable pest management in California. Many even come back to attend and participate in this event. So I haven't had a chance to check in with folks, but I'm wondering if we have any former winners in the audience. If there are, oh wow, so many. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And these folks have continued to advance sustainable pest management. It's great to have you a part of the community that's building SPM leadership throughout the state. And I encourage everyone to catch up with them in addition to our panelists after our ceremony during the networking event. Okay, so what is SPM, or sustainable pest management? You've been hearing that term. So very, very briefly, there's so much to it. It builds on the foundation of integrated pest management, or IPM, which has its history in this state. And it takes into account these broader considerations of human health and social equity, environmental protections, and economic vitality. Today, I'm pleased to recognize 3 California organizations that are leaders in practicing IPM and protecting health and the environment. Their work is varied, from providing IPM education opportunities to Spanish-speaking communities, to providing ecosystem-based aquatic management to support community access to nature, and finally, to using biological control to prevent Mediterranean fruit fly infestations. And some of the themes we've heard around prevention and so on resonate with this group of winners. This year, I was able to visit each award winner at their various work sites to learn about their sustainable pest management activities and to see the impact that each organization is making in California. So you'll see some of my visits in each award recipient's video, which will play in the next few minutes. So with that, the moment we've been waiting for, the presentation of awards. And I'm pleased to announce that our first award recipient is Wild Farm Alliance. So a little bit about Wild Farm Alliance. It is a nonprofit organization with a mission to promote healthy, viable agriculture that helps to protect and restore wild nature. Wild Farm Alliance was founded in 2000 by a group of wildlands proponents and ecological farming advocates, and has grown in outreach and partnerships to reach thousands of growers, practitioners, and other stakeholders yearly. Their work throughout California, particularly along the Central Coast, has provided access to IPM resources and training for Spanish-speaking communities. Staff and I recently visited with Joanne Baumgartner, Executive Director of Wild Farm Alliance, to talk about the importance of their work and to attend an on-farm training event. So here's the first video and an overview of their work.
Can you tell me a little bit more about how Wild Farm Alliance promotes integrated pest management? And controls pests.
One of our goals is to help farmers have diverse habitat, which then means they're going to have a diverse community of organisms. And those organisms feed in different places and have different foraging strategies. Then you can have a blanket of attack, so to speak. Typically, we're working with small growers and diverse growers. Sometimes we'll work with big growers. Sometimes they're organic, sometimes they're conventional. We are going to be starting a program helping Spanish-speaking growers. This event that's coming up, it's bilingual. Latino growers and Latino workers, there are more of them than anybody else growing our food in this country. We want to just make sure that they do have opportunities to learn about how to bring nature into the farm better.
Dice un dicho que a donde fueras, pues haz lo que vieras, ¿verdad? Entonces yo miré muchos setos aquí y le comenté a Sacha que si podemos hacer uno en esta área para tratar de conectar todo eso con la área de arriba.
Si se ha hecho un buen control de maleza, si se ha hecho un buen manejo del riego, las plantas ya están fuertes, están más grandes, bien establecidas, ya casi que arrancan por sí solas y con muy poco mantenimiento, muy poca atención.
We love to work with researchers and farmers lifting up their stories and helping to share innovations and information around how you can support pest control, pollination, and water and soil resources.
Joanne was generous enough to have us visit her home for filming a portion of this event because it was pouring rain the day before. But a theme here is SPM must go on, rain or shine. I think is there a bit of an echo? It's okay. All right. Wild Farm Alliance's commitment to sustainable pest management through social equity and outreach is crucial for the Central Grower community. It was really special to go and see this work in person. So thank you for hosting us. Thank you for showing us this field day, and staff had a chance to participate in it, which was exciting. So I want to present you with a certificate. Wild Farm Alliance's work is also being recognized by 2 legislative representatives with certificates of recognition, one from Senator John Laird, who's from Senate District 17, and another from Speaker of the Assembly, Robert Rivas, from Assembly District 29. So congratulations again, Joanne, and maybe we'll take a few photos. Yeah.
Okay, it's such an honor to receive this award for Wild Farm Alliance. And we strongly believe in DPR's Sustainable Pest Management Roadmap, and we want to see it implemented immediately, or actually yesterday. Look, we know conservation biological control works. That's the habitat that supports pest management. But we're running out of time to figure out how this beautiful world works before more biodiversity and its functions are lost for good. Most farmers, they resonate with stewardship, stewarding resources, and they almost all farmers resonate if they can save money doing that. Our focus has been to help farmers and others, people who help assist farmers in understanding how they can support the natural world and benefit from it. But to coexist, we have to understand what nature needs. For example, the bluebird, it needs a large tree with a cavity, and it needs nest boxes, and it needs food, so you can't spray everything. Or the minute pirate bug needs soft leaf tissue of cover crop like the cowpea that it lays its eggs in, and before either can take up residence and start to help the farm. They need those resources. We also need to reduce the amount of pesticides so that these species can survive and thrive. Thanks to DPR for forging the path to a safer world. DPR has been a great partner for us in our work, serving farmers, PCAs, farm workers, people of color, women, low income, people of low wealth, and farms of all size, small farmers, small, medium, and big farms. And through our SPM field days, webinars, videos, on-demand continuing education courses, and publications, we're inspiring farmers to take actions, to take steps that are knitting back the biodiversity into our farmscapes so that not just a few individual species are present, but there's a diverse mix of beneficial arthropods, birds, and others comprising a blanket of attack. I noticed I said that already in that video. I like that concept, blanket of attack. And that's our vision. I think it melds well with DPR's Sustainable Pest Management Roadmap. Thank you again.
I will try to integrate using a blanket of attack into conversation today. Thank you again, Joanne and Wild Farm Alliance. All right, our next award winner is Lake Tech Incorporated. Based in Benicia, you're welcome to come up, or you can stay. This is Eli, you'll hear about him. Based in Benicia, Lake Tech is an environmental consulting company that provides ecosystem-based aquatic management for public and private lakes, mostly in Northern California. Lake Tech focuses on safer, more sustainable IPM practices that balance environmental considerations and enhance natural lake qualities to keep lakes healthy and accessible to communities. Their work helps to maintain community access to nature, even in urban areas, like you will see in this video, which features our visit with Eli Kirsch, president of Lake Tech at Oakland's Lake Merritt. And so we have our next video.
So Eli, thanks for having us here in Oakland today. Tell us more about Lake Tech and what you do.
Lake Tech, we're an environmental restoration company. We do a lot of consulting work, a lot of water quality, environmental monitoring work, and we help people try to understand their environments and come up with solutions for pest management. One of the unique things about Lake Tech in the industry here, especially in California, is we have developed our own software and our own monitoring tools where we, in real time through the internet, can monitor things like oxygen levels, nutrient levels, fluctuations and changes in weather, and really start to understand the natural behaviors of water bodies that we manage. And then we can also identify where there are abnormalities or behaviors that might incentivize or encourage pest growth. A good example of an IPM tool is understanding in the natural environment how nutrients and how food supplies interact with the water and interact with the climate. And if we can monitor those and understand that behavior, we can start to correlate how pest growth reacts to these changes in the environment. We've been able to be much more proactive about our management. And by being proactive, we can now start to address the pests before they become harmful and require pesticides. The most exciting one we've had recently was using some nutrient reduction strategies and oxygenation tools in combination in Oakland in Lake Temescal. And we were able to eliminate all harmful algae blooms for the whole year, which is the first time in over a decade that's happened. So we were able to keep the swim beaches open for the public all year long with some really simple solutions, addressing those scientific fundamentals, addressing why those pests were thriving, and then targeting those as a pest control solution.
So I was especially excited about this visit since I live in Oakland, and I have been observing as a resident that Lake Merritt has been improving in water quality over the years. So it's fun to learn all the details and to go on Lake Merritt for the first time. So thank you, Eli. I have a certificate for you. Also here to provide recognition for Lake Tech's achievements are Emiliano Rosas from Senator Christopher Cabran's office, Senate District 3, and Mark Rosso, Legislative Director for Assembly Member Lori Wilson from Assembly District 11.
Hi, thank you. Mark Rosso representing Assemblymember Wilson. Would just like to thank Lake Tech on behalf of AD 11. We're a very, agricultural-based district with a lot of wetlands, marsh, and everything else. So ensuring that we're having organizations like yourself creating alternative solutions for pest management that employ less chemical utilization, less sort of harmful, toxic practices is always a great thing for a district to keep it clean and beautiful, and the reason why people live in California. So thank you so much for the work you have done, and hope to continue to see you blossom in the district. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys all very much. This is a really big milestone for me, probably the next biggest milestone since getting my PCA license. And I want to say first, I really appreciate DPR giving this opportunity to a private company because I think private companies, small scale California companies, we sacrifice a lot. We take a lot of risks to do what we have as a calling, and the same calling all of you have, because we really want to help and we really care about what we're doing. So, my wife's here, and the late nights, the 6 days of work, the taking phone calls at inappropriate times to answer your customers' questions. It's really feels great to be recognized that what we're doing is valuable. What my company has done is noticed that in our industry, in our specific industry in aquatic management, IPM has been really misunderstood. Often we simplify it and we think, well, we're just going to do our cultural, our biological, our physical, and then really reduce that chemical. And what we've found is the problem has been people forget that it's actually part of that systematic approach, right? Where we monitor, we identify, we determine why that pest is present. What is it about this environment that's making that pest thrive? And then not only do we implement a solution, but we evaluate. And so our software has now taken the ability to help and educate even just the lay person, the novice lake manager, the novice city manager, the parks district person, and given them the tools where now they could take diverse data sets, application records, climate, weather, water quality, and put it all together, the field logs, the operational data with the environmental data. And what this is doing is transitioning with the state of California from not just IPM and evaluation and having a systematic approach, but looking at that true systematic, sustainable approach, which is to take that next step where we're able to not just do this work and do it differently, but really evaluate and then think about that systems approach. If we understand how oxygen plays a role with these chemicals, if we understand how these chemicals or using chemicals or just killing a pest in general has an impact further down the line, exacerbating problems potentially in the future. So if we can educate people and give them the right tools to make it easy for them to do this evaluation, they better understand the tactics they're using and they can better evaluate and improve long term. So I really appreciate being given this award today and hope to be able to help more people with the tools and solutions we've found and developed for people. So thank you guys so much.
But appreciate all your correct words. Congratulations again, Eli and Lake Tech. Our third and final award recipient is the CDFA USDA MedFly Preventative Release Program. Feel free to come up. Based in Los Alamitos, the MedFly Preventative Release Program is a cooperative program between the California Department of Food and Agriculture and the U.S. Department of Agriculture that aims to prevent Mediterranean fruit fly infestations in California. To move away from conventional aerial pesticide treatments, the program expanded and invested in using a sterile insect technique for the prevention of medfly establishment in the state. The technique is safe and effective. It's a safe and effective IPM practice where large numbers of sterile insects are released to decrease the reproductive potential of invasive and destructive flies. And you'll see how this works in our next video. CDFA Program Director Ian Walters gave staff and me a tour of the facility and explained the impressive vital work of this program that it does every day, rain or shine. So here's more about the program in our last video.
Why are medflies so bad?
So medfly is one of the world's worst pests. It consumes over 250 different types of fruit, vegetable, nut, and berry crops. And California grows about 170 of those crops commercially. So if medfly were to become established in the state, it would have a devastating impact on our agriculture industry.
I've heard a lot about the economic impacts of the program, and I'm wondering if you can speak more to that.
So the Medfly Preventive Release Program, the annual cost is roughly $12 million per year. It's estimated that if the Mediterranean fruit fly were to become established in the state of California, the annual losses would approach $2 billion a year. So it's a significant potential cost savings through this preventive release program. The California Department of Food and Agriculture has a sterile fruit fly production facility in Hawaii.
We receive them a -2. We rear them, they emerge from the pupa casing after 2 days, and then we give them 2 additional days to feed, and then we process them for release.
That release box is going to sit on top of these augers.
Yeah.
So the pilot is able to turn the machine on and off and change the rate of release. We track the information for that release. We determine how many flies per square mile we actually released. We have 3 to 4 releases per day, 7 days a week.
Why such a concentration here in the LA Basin?
The program is established here because this is the pathway. We're the gateway to California. Most of our infestations are occurring through shipments of infested material. So our objective is to release the sterile males in the LA Basin to stop the flies from potentially spreading into those agricultural production areas. You know, how I feel about what it is that I do is it's something that affects everybody because everybody eats, right? So everybody consumes fruits and vegetables. So if you're doing something that protects the food supply, that's benefits everyone.
I can't wait to show that video to my kids so they can see how such a little fly can be so bad. What I really like about this program is just it really showcases how much prevention can save us money. And it also showcases a holistic approach to pest management and is really attuned to the relationships between landscapes, which is a key part of SPM. How we manage pests in urban areas is really important for protecting agriculture. So Ian, thank you. So we have a guest who would like to congratulate the CDFA USDA MedFly Preventive Release Program. Assembly Member Tree Ta from Assembly District 70 is here to provide some remarks. Please come on up.
Hello, everyone. I'm Assemblyman Tree Ta. I'm so honored to be here. And first, I'd like to thank the California TPR for hosting this event to recognize the agency and the company for being a hero in industry. Really save a lot of organization in the farming industry. I really appreciate that. And I also want to extend my congratulations to the program. This is a direct partnership between the federal and the state, between the U.S. Department of Agriculture and California Department of Food and Agriculture for MedFly Preventive Release Program. This is actually the issue that I'm aware of that a long time ago when I was mayor of City of Westminster. I'm really, really aware of that. And I think a few times, I think at the city level, we received the announcement or maybe the um, notice. I think probably uh, either from the agency or come from the department. But I'm really proud that because of the partnership, so we could able to achieve our goal. And I'm really proud that I represent Los Al in Sacramento. So everything that any city, any group from my district, I'm really, really proud of. And I want to thank you so much for your hard work, for your strong commitment to save the farming industry. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you, everyone. I'll get a little taller. I'm extremely grateful and honored to be here to receive this prestigious award on behalf of the MedFly Preventive Release Program and the incredible team of individuals who contribute to its ongoing success. I want to start by thanking the Department of Pesticide Regulation for their recognition of our program. I would also like to acknowledge our collaborators within the California Department of Food and Agriculture, the United States Department of Agriculture, and the County Agricultural Commissioner's offices, whose support and cooperation are essential to the pursuit of our mission. Prior to the founding of the MedFly Preventive Release Program, CDFA employed a reactive approach to eradicate infestations when they were detected. This approach was slow, costly, and sometimes relied on controversial aerial pesticide applications. In 1996, the MedFly Preventive Release Program was established to address the escalating introduction pressure in the Los Angeles basin and to prevent MedFly from becoming established in California. The primary mission of the program is to utilize sterile insect technique to interrupt the reproductive cycle of MedFly incursions. This year marks a significant milestone in our program's history as we celebrate our 30th anniversary. Since inception, the program has reared and released hundreds of billions of sterile fruit flies. The proactive efforts of this program have contributed to a significant reduction in the quantity and size of infestations in the Los Angeles basin. And in addition, the program facility has produced hundreds of billions of sterile Mediterranean and Mexican fruit flies for use on more than 60 eradication programs that have occurred throughout California since the early 1990s. The combined approach taken by CDFA and USDA to address invasive pests has evolved significantly over the years. The agencies continue to make advancements in the SPM field while endeavoring to discover ways to reduce the overall use of pesticides in all forms. I'm extremely proud of the program and its many dedicated, knowledgeable, and professional staff who are committed to its success. I would again like to thank DPR for offering recognition to individuals, organizations, and entities working in the fields of integrated pest management and sustainable pest management. I hope that this recognition of our collective work and proven successes can serve as an inspiration to others working in the IPM and SPM field and those considering a career in the field. The MedFly Preventive Release Program will continue its work to prevent MedFly from becoming established in California and will endeavor to innovate, evolve, and bring about transformative changes in the field of sustainable pest management for many years to come. Thank you.
Congratulations again to the CDFA USDA MedFly Preventative Release Program. And congratulations to all the winners. Thank you for your inspiring work and for sharing some good news with all of us today. Before we wrap up this year's awards ceremony, I'd also like to take a moment to recognize the people who put the ceremony together. This includes staff, amazing staff from throughout the department who screen potential awardees, design outreach materials, produce videos, and coordinate all the people who need to be here today. If you're in the room, could you please stand up? Or maybe they're in the other room. They're around. I know they're around. Thank you. Thank you. So as we end this portion of the event, I'd like to welcome back DPR Director Karen Morrison to provide closing remarks.
So I'll keep this brief to not take up too much time before we head to the networking session, but I want to congratulate all of our winners. Again, this is one of my favorite events of the year, and the process by which the team is evaluating and really highlighting all of the amazing work that you as individually and your collective organizations are doing is just so exciting. And so I'm really thrilled to be able to welcome you to an esteemed group of 187 other organizations that we have awarded over 30 plus years of history for this program. And so so thrilled to be able to recognize your contributions to IPM and SPM within this space. We'll also just note that we are looking at ways to be able to better highlight some of this work. And so we actually just launched a story map highlighting all the different work that's been done in the space over the last 30 years, and really encourage you to check it out. But the day is not over. So building on our theme of collaboration and partnership to advance SPM, we're really encouraging you to head next door to the Coastal Hearing Room for a networking session, including partner exhibits and demonstrations. So we're actually going to be kicking off at 2:15. So that's maybe we'll say 2:18. Give us 5 minutes to transition over by Louis Aguerto from Pest Tech, who is a former pest management grantee focusing on rodent and weed management. And so we'll talk about the Rodent Log app. And then at 2:50, we'll be giving a presentation on weed cuts. So it's really exciting to be able to talk about some of the practical on-the-ground applications of IPM, as well as opportunities to be able to talk with partner agencies and organizations whose names, if they're not up yet or have not flashed, will be up on the screen right now. So when exiting, head out. There's booths out in the mezzanine as well as in the room next door, and look forward to talking with you all. Thank you all so much for being here. And one final round of applause for our award winners.